Hi, welcome back. I am Allison Olson. I am here with Laura Khoury. We are both adoptive parents. I am also an adoptee, and Laura and I are both children's adoption book authors. So we've also been friends for over 25 years. So today we are going to tackle a tough topic, saviorism in adoption. And this is going to be, like all of ours, they're casual conversations, but usually we ask one question of one person and they're the whole segment, right? And then we use another segment as a separate question. This is just going to be both Laura and I talking about different things around kind of, I like to call it the new trend in adoption, news relative. So for folks that don't know me well, so I was born in 1979. I was adopted in 1980. I am a infant domestic private closed adoption. That's all the words for me. So I have an older brother, same thing, just a year and a half older. And no, we're not biologically related. Always question we get. What is interesting to me is when I was adopted. So I'm going to give a little bit of the history of, again, sample of two, one family sample of two. When I was adopted, it is my understanding that there were very few children's books on adoption. There were just two. And we had both, and I still have them. I can show them sometime in one of these.
I'd like to.
Yeah, they're old. The big thing, but they actually, to me, were more appropriate for adoption than some of the ones now. And so the thing that's interesting for me was when I was younger, and when my parents talk about their adoption and just kind of the way that adoption was back then, it was very clear that adoption was a way to expand your family. And that was the narrative. It was, we desperately want a child. We've tried as much as we can. And this is why we are going for adoption. Adoption also back then, basically only cost the court fees, lawyer fees, and a little bit more to the adoption agency. But I think I have my bill. I'll see if I can bring it here, but it's around $200. That was the cost of my adoption back in 1980, because you get adopted a year after you're born back then, in the state I was born in, Illinois. So it's interesting to me that from then until when I was going through the adoption process for our youngest daughter, how the narrative had changed. Instead of, this family has been wanting and yearning for a child, and they, were willing to jump through all these hoops. I mean, the wait list, my parents told me, it was 5 to 7 years for adoption. And remember, this is also in rural central Illinois. And if you moved out of their area, and they're very tiny, like district kind of areas for these adoption centers, they do not compete or overlap. If you move outside, you then go to the bottom of the wait list of this other adoption agency, and you do have to go through their stuff as well. So they did move in my brother's prior to adopting my brother, and so they got bumped down, and they had to wait even longer to be able to adopt him. So that's just quick snippet to back then. Fast forward to, oh gosh, I can't even remember now the year that we started all of our stuff, which was born in 2020, let's say like 2018 maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, probably 2018, 2019, something like that. And so we went through the process, and they had warned about saviorism, and when we knew we were going to adopt, I definitely went on to all of social media and joined all these different groups. And very specifically, I joined a lot of adoptee voice groups, right? And then I did join several adoptive parent ones. And the tone was very different to me. It was interesting, right? And then as we went through training, they talked about saviorism, training through the home study to get approved for adoption. And this was the whole, don't change the narrative to be, I came in and saved you, and that I, as an adoptive parent, am the hero. Right. I'm like, wow, that's what people are telling kids. Holy crap. I told Laura I was going to be honest, and now I'm cussing. I cannot imagine the damage that could do to a child. Right.
And I wonder, do you think that
yeah.
they're telling, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, please do.
I feel like that might not be what they're telling kids as much as what they're telling themselves and what they're telling their friends and their neighbors, and just the message that they want, like, to shout to the rooftops is that, you know, I think it's, to me, started when, like, I mean, adopting babies from Asia, definitely. And I don't even know when that started, when it was like, it was literally, you're saving them from death or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That narrative that sort of, then it became almost like a status symbol to have a child that was adopted of a different race than yours. But then when Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt did it, I mean, that was like, that has to be when it peaked, you know.
Okay, there you go. That helps get me from 1980 to here. Thank you.
Yeah, to me, that's what it was. And it became like such a trendy thing to do, and a status symbol rather than a way to expand your family that maybe wouldn't be talked about as much or like as noticeable.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very helpful, because I was just shocked by it. So that's very helpful to hear. And it's been interesting. So since we adopted our daughter, I've had multiple people come up to me and say, and very seriously want to, pull me aside, have a conversation around adoption. I also want to be clear, several people have pulled me aside and had conversations around adoption and haven't mentioned like wanting to save a child, right? So I've had several of both, but was surprised to still have several say basically the phrase of, well, we could have a child on our own, but we'd rather save a child in need. And then I would say, okay, well, explain more about what in need is. Like, is this like an older child that's about to age out of the foster system? Is it like, well, what are you looking to do? And then, it always comes back to domestic infant adoption. I'm like, there's nothing, they're not being saved from anything. So it's been an interesting conversation. I'm always, gentle with folks in conversations, but, I say like, hey, this is oftentimes a birth mom that loves their child, and there are very tough situations, very tough adult situations where they can't raise that child. And so the child is there's not much it's being saved from, right? And especially considering there's so many other hopeful adoptive parents that are like, have been through all the training, have been through everything. They're just like waiting for their number, like, call me please, and so anyway, so that stuff was interesting. And then I'm curious from your perspective, because you have adopted, you have one of your oldest daughter, private adoption. Your youngest, you adopted from foster care as a baby, and then you've been a foster parent. So with all of that, how do you hear different people talk about saving a child, or this kind of saviorism theme, and what has your experience been?
Yeah, we also get the same kind of conversations. Oftentimes, the one that really gets me, which I don't know is necessarily saviorism, but I think it could be at the heart, is like, oh, we're considering adoption. We could have another biological, but I think it would be easier to adopt.
Ooh.
Oh, goodness. Like, you have no idea. Like, it's very challenging to adopt. You have to have a pretty open heart. You have to like a really tough skin, because you're gonna like be through a journey, and then that's a forever different family. I never quite know how to handle that one either. But I do have a lot of people who come up, or they don't always say that they want to do it, but they'll want to like pat us on the back or like,
oh, like say good,
comfort.
you did a good thing by adopt. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when people come and they, especially with foster care, and they say that they want, or they're considering fostering or becoming a foster family, I like to let them know because I think that you do have to have a part of you who is willing to give back, and you're not necessarily going to always be receiving anything when you're a foster
Yeah.
parent. I mean, you get like a very little amount of income in money,
Yeah.
but not a ton. But I know when we did it, it was like I had been teaching and I had some health concerns that prevented me from continuing to teach. So I was staying home with my daughter, and we were open maybe to adopting again. And I have like a really good set of skills that make me really good with kids. And so that's kind of why I wanted to foster, because I was like, this is a way that I can give back and something that I am good at. And, but it is so time consuming. Like a lot of people want to do it, and they just, like working parents who want to do it. And there's a lot of successful working parents who do want to do it, but especially if you're talking about it, a younger child, there's so much that comes. I mean, you have to give pretty much all of your time. There's appointments and meetings, and it's a lot more challenging than even just having an infant in terms of the amount of meetings outside of and appointments that you need to go to, and you don't have a choice. It's not like when you just adopt, you don't have a choice. If you want to like take them for an eval, like you have to take them for several evaluations. You have to have people into your home to work with them, especially in Michigan. Like that's just a guarantee, and you have to make time for it. But yeah, it's in terms of like, do you do it out of the goodness of your heart? And are you going to be like if people just want to have that pat on the back, it's like, no, it is a labor of love to do, this work. And I think it could start with the desire to give back. But hearing that you were saying that people like might say that to their child, I don't like that at all. That feels scary to me for a child to hear that.
In fact, I'm going to add on to that piece. And Laura and I have talked about this before. So obviously there's a reason that we wrote our children's books, right? If the story we had wanted to tell was out there, we would have just bought that book, right? So, we always talk about, we usually don't want to speak negatively of other authors, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about specifically the inside of this book. So do a Google search if you want to figure out which book it is. There was one book that I was, as an adoptee, I was very turned off by the saviorism in the book. So that's where, to me, it got to the point where this book, and then some other books for different reasons, some like lesser reasons, but this was like, whoa. And again, I bought this book, I own it, and I will not let us read it to my youngest daughter. In every spread on one page, it has a child alone, right? Which I already don't like that imagery, but a child alone. And it says things like, you needed a home. And on the other page, we had a home to give you. Flip the page. You had tears. We were there to wipe them away. Next page, you needed a hug. We were there to give you a hug. I almost puked. So people that know me and people that are taking the time to watch this YouTube video, now you know me. And that's where my concern came in of the saviorism narrative to the child, because I can only imagine what you grow up feeling. So there are a lot of, there are a lot of adoptees' voices all over the place that have had lots of different experiences, but the ones that grew up and were told, hey, we saved you from whatever, right? From an orphanage, from death, from being on the streets, from whatever. They tend to grow up with a fear, like they over please people. And there are all of these like psychological things. I am not a professional, so I'm not going to talk about different diagnoses for this. But there's no way growing up and hearing that you in and of yourself are not good enough and worthy enough, that, you know, you needed these parents to come along and do these things for you. Like it's the truth is all kids need parents that give them hugs. All kids. So it's like, why is that called out specifically here? And why is that they should be made to feel thankful that there were parents there to come in. And so to me, that's the stuff that that does cause the long-term damage. So that would be my only suggestion, is like, buy the book, read the book, figure out if you feel like it meets your, you know, your needs as a parent in general, and then definitely as an adoptive parent, and then make the decision if it, you know, fits your situation where you feel comfortable reading it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think one of the other narratives that we just have to be careful about is like, as the adoptive parents, like we needed a baby and you
Build a need.
Yes. And I mean, one of the things I had heard one time was sort of like, because we're my family, we're a Christian family. We believe in God. We do believe that, that we were connected. I mean, both of my kids, their stories and the way that we were connected. I mean, that is something I believe that it was meant to be, that we were connected together, but I never want my kids to think that they lost their first parent because I needed a baby.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that by any means, you know, like I wouldn't have changed my story either. I mean, I when I think back, like if I could, I wouldn't have changed it because I got to be with my two baby girls, you know,
Yeah.
but I do want them to know that, that God didn't do that to them, didn't take away their first parent. But I think, and I believe, and one of the things that I say to them is, I think I was made to be your mama, you know, but I don't necessarily want them to think that they had to go through all that pain so that I could be their mama, you know?
Yeah.
But, and that's like one of those things that just has to sort of evolve and to change, and to, as they get older, like explaining some of it to them, and explaining in a way that they feel the love. But you know, with Cecilia in particular, one of the things that we kind of do, like she and I, when I'm putting her to bed, is we do like an ugga mugga where I like kind of, we rub our noses together. And a lot of times I'll just say like, you know, I was made for you and you were made for me. And one of the times when I like kind of was listening to a podcast, it kind of like that came into my mind, like, oh, like I don't want her to think like she had to go through all the things
through all that. Yeah.
But I do think that I was made to be her mama. I mean, there's like so many parts of who she is that I honor. You know, she's got a lot of energy and we just work through it. And, you know, she's got, you know, other needs that her dad and I are really good at navigating with her. And I do think that we were meant to be together. But I don't want them to ever think that they needed to fill a void in our lives, you know. But I do want them to know that we're here and we love them and how much we love them and how much they were wanted even before they were born, you know, and how so it's just, there's a little bit of saviorism like kind of stuck in there. But I think as the adoptive parents, it's our job to sort of like work through some of that trauma that we have, so that we can be the best parents that we can possibly be for the children who are you know, in our lives. And even if it's not our own children, even if it's just, you know, like our neighbors or whoever, you know, our nieces and nephews, just making sure that we have, you know, enough growth behind us to be who they need. So
I love that. I think that's very well said. In fact, I think that's a perfect way to end this up. Thank you for talking with me about this topic. I hope that this was helpful for folks, for us to tackle the tough discussion. So more from us, and comment if you want us to talk about any specific topic. Thanks.
Sounds good. All right. Bye.